welcome. Welcome to ISSQUARED headquarters here in Westlake Village. That's where we're broadcasting from. My name is Don Rudolph. I'm the Senior Security Consultant for ISSQUARED. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's really been on my mind lately, actually been bothering me a lot lately. One thing we've noticed, or one of the things that our clients are calling us for much more often these days is ransomware attacks. Unfortunately, we've had customers consistently over the last year calling in reporting that their systems have been hacked and hackers are demanding ransom from them. Now, of course, if you do the research and look at the headlines, you'll know that this is an endemic problem, a problem that's all over the United States, in fact, all over the world. And really, our goal here at ISSQUARED is to help you protect yourself against such attacks. And we want to do that in a very holistic way. So that's why the title of this webinar is Holistic Defense Against Ransomware, 5 Steps that you can take to reduce risk. So the focus of our webinar today is really about taking specific action steps. So what I hope that you'll get out of this presentation are 5 specific things that you can do starting tomorrow, actually, where you can implement, start implementing a plan to reduce your footprint and reduce the risk that you'll be attacked or harmed by a ransomware malware in your network. So just as I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but right before I was preparing this presentation, going through my usual news feeds, all of a sudden all these articles, of course, came up about ransomware. So, through my slide deck here that I'm going to show you, I'm just going to flip through just 2 or 3. And if you look at the dates, you'll see that they're very, very recent. So one, we have Tesla, a subcontractor for Tesla and Boeing, who were attacked by ransomware. That was just a few days ago. We also have the FBI coming out with a report that says that ransomware victims have paid over $140 million to attackers in ransoms. So this is something that we really need to do something about, and our goal here is to help you do something about it. So again, the purpose is to give you specific action items, specific steps. So what do you need to do? What's the first thing that you should do when you are finished with this webinar and go back to your office? First step you need to do is inventory your information. So what does that basically mean? You probably, if you're in IT and you're listening to this, you probably know where your systems are, where your servers are, but I think what I would ask you to do or challenge you to do is to take it, maybe one step further. So besides identifying where all your hosts and your servers and your routers and your switches, where they're located on your network, which you probably already know, what I would challenge you to do is to reach out to your business colleagues to find out what data are they holding within the organization that's vital to their business function. So, for example, you may want to go to the accounting team and find out where are those weird spreadsheets, those one-off spreadsheets that may be located that have specific information about how to access a funds transfer program, for example, or a list of your clients that have repeating credit card information that are stored on maybe somebody's local hard drive, right, on their laptops, that if they lost that, it'd be almost impossible for them to do business. So that's your first step, is to do a very thorough investigation, a thorough analysis of where your critical data and information are. On-premise, cloud, partner sites, and particularly, like I mentioned before, where your unstructured data is located that may be critical to your operations. So that's step 1. That should be pretty clear. Next step. This is something that my colleague Surya Jata will talk about in his presentation that's coming up, is really about risk. So identifying and prioritizing what information that you need to protect. So step 1 was, hey, I've got all my information, I know where it is, I know where it's located. The next step is, again, working with your business colleagues, finding out which items present the highest risk to the organization. So for example, what you might want to do is list all the sensitive information within your organization that may be located in your ERP systems, accounting systems, payroll and HRIS systems, which would have sensitive data. Any point of sale or sales systems that may house credit card information. And one thing that's often overlooked are, especially in HR systems, are information about healthcare insurance premiums, items that would be considered protected health information that would be sensitive to the organization as well. The other thing to look at, which again, most people probably know where the information is located, is your intellectual property. So trade secrets or engineering drawings, data that would be, would help your competitors if it happened to get leaked out. So this may at first glance seem a little counterintuitive because in most cases, as probably most of you know, ransomware attack hackers pretty much focus on getting money from you. They don't really care that much about your data. They really more care about getting money from you. But there's another method or methodology that the hackers will use on occasion, and that is because they know that oftentimes you can restore from backup. What they'll do is they'll take your sensitive data or data that you really care about, hold that ransom, and threaten to release it to the public in the event that you don't pay. So again, it's really important to do a risk assessment, and that means prioritizing your information. Which one is most mission critical? Which data, if lost, would be a blow to your business or damage to your reputation or cause material loss? So that's your second step. So number one, identify where your information is. Step number two is prioritize that information. So you've completed the risk assessment, you've identified where your information is located. The next step is, of course, to remediate and strengthen your controls around this information. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. But the reason why I have user education at the top of the list is because, as you know, the human equation is the weakest link in the chain typically. So again, this is our own experience from our own clients. What we really need to do is focus on educating our users. So not only the end users, but I think it's also vitally important to train IT staff and your developer team on best practices, security best practices, during their operations. So beyond user education, what can we do to strengthen our network, at least in a general sense? And by the way, these are things that ISSQUARED can absolutely help you with if you want to reach out and talk to us about it. We're more than happy to assist you in any or all of these steps that we can take that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So I think, again, the Microsoft CISO was one of the first ones to say passwords are basically dead. So one weak area of our networks is basically using usernames and passwords to authenticate into systems because those are inherently weak. The reason why is because there's these huge databases now available for guessable passwords that hackers will use to try to brute force and guess passwords to go into your network. So one way to prevent that is to implement two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Most of you know what that is, but for those of you who don't, it's really entering username and password credentials, but then you would enter a second factor or another factor in addition to your password. And that would include, for example, a text that may be sent to you with a code, it may be a phone call, or perhaps even biometrics where you'd use a fingerprint or your face to essentially authenticate in as your second factor. So what that does is it prevents you from getting hacked on just pure brute force password attacks. And again, you should look across the board in your organization, not just Active Directory, not just your user accounts, but also any cloud accounts or anything that's accessible via the web should also be protected, if possible, by multi-factor authentication. If you use Dropbox, for example, or Office 365, consider putting multi-factor authentication on top of that so the hacker can't get into those accounts. Password policies and practices sort of fall in that as well, but the other thing that we can do is talk about firewalls and next generation firewalls in particular. So I'll take a little bit of a detour here just to talk about firewall technology in general very quickly. Back in the 90s, firewall technology essentially came to the fore. And so what they did was look at packets and block or drop packets that they deemed were potentially risky or malicious. And then the next phase of firewall technology was stateful inspection. So they would look at the overall behavior of packets, for example, flowing through your network and block or redirect those according to policies that you place on the firewall. But at the end of all of this, really the philosophy is to put a solid perimeter at the edge of your network through which you would control the flow of information in. And that was actually quite effective for many, many, many years. However, in 2010, roughly, a new model is sort of emerging, and we think that probably has some legs, and we'll probably do a webinar on that at a future date, and that has to do with zero trust. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is the zero trust model essentially says that the idea that you have a trusted part of the network, which is inside, and an untrusted part of your network, which is on the outside, i.e. the internet, is sort of evolving because we have so much more control now over traffic within your network. What we're saying is, on the assumption of breach, is that there's bad guys in your network already, or we need to control lateral movement of a hacker if they do get in. So we're not going to trust anybody, either if they're outside the network or inside the network. In either case, we're going to trust nobody. And that's called the zero trust model. And the reason why I bring that up is simply because investing a lot of money or time and effort into your firewall is actually absolutely valid and important to do, but just keep in mind that zero trust models as they evolve will mean you have to do things behind the firewall as well, right? The other thing that I'll mention in the context of firewalls, one thing that a lot of people don't look at is blocking outbound traffic. So for the most part, firewalls are blocking traffic that comes into your network. One thing that people often overlook is traffic that is leaving your network. And the reason why that is important is, again, if you do happen to get hacked, one of the techniques that hackers will use is to exfiltrate your data. In other words, they're looking for a way to send your data outside of your network. In the case of ransomware, this doesn't happen very often. In most cases, they don't care about your data. They just are going to encrypt all of your files and ask you to pay to decrypt them. However, in some cases, ransomware hackers will get in, try to steal your data, and hold that ransom in order to make you pay. So by protecting the outbound protocols, you're limiting the ways that a bad guy can essentially send the data outside the network, out of your control, essentially, to hold it ransom against you. So that's an important consideration to make as well. So one of our clients recently who had a ransomware attack, one of the ways that they were attacked was through a service account. So a service account is an account like maybe it runs your tape backup system, or maybe it runs your faxing system. And typically these service accounts are given full administrative rights. If that account gets compromised, either because it's using a default password or an easily guessable password, that would allow a hacker to basically escalate their privileges to domain admin, and then they would have full control over your network, which is something you don't want. So one thing to do on a regular basis is to review all of your service accounts, make sure you rotate passwords on those even, if possible, and to eliminate any unnecessary service accounts that may be on your network and exposed to the outside world. So those are just a few of the ideas. And again, ISSQUARED stands ready to jump in and assist you on any of this in terms of doing an assessment for you and helping you with remediating any of these items if you wish. So the fourth step that we'll talk about today is patching and updates. So this is, I call it blocking and tackling. So it's the fundamentals of IT. And again, it's something that typically, because IT departments are so stretched, so thin, so overworked, yeah, we feel your pain, that they just don't have time to keep up with the endless chain of patches, updates, and fixes that have to be applied, not just to PCs, but to many other devices in your network. So one specific step that you can take is come up with a plan to address vulnerability management and patching your systems. So the statistic that I read, the last study that I looked at, approximately 70 to 80% of all successful malware hacking attacks into networks had to do with exploiting vulnerabilities on unpatched systems. So this, again, is very low-hanging fruit, relatively easy to do, but you need to have a specific plan and take action steps immediately in order to make sure that you're keeping those patches current, updated. You have a mechanism by which that you can get reports, send them to your manager, and have some oversight over those patches to ensure that they're actually being done. So I recommend implementing a patch management program in your organization just as soon as you can. Now again, at ISSQUARED, we provide managed services, and that's part of the duties of our team, right? So if you don't have time, if you are overstretched, one of the things that you can do is hire a managed services provider like ISSQUARED to basically take ownership of your systems and make sure that they're kept patched and up to date. We'll send you reports every month showing you the level of percentage of compliance on all the patches on your systems. So when you're patching, you also have to consider obviously servers and your hosts, hypervisors as well as virtual servers. Cloud systems, if you're doing it in a co-location, or if you own your own cloud infrastructure, if your provider, in other words, isn't doing it for you. PCs, workstations, endpoints, laptops, but also mobile devices, printers, routers, switches, firewalls should all have their firmware and code as up to date as possible. The other issue that we find is very common is the lack of, let's call it, third-party application visibility into patching, right? So not only do you have the Microsoft or Mac OS operating system that you have to keep patched and up to date, there are applications like Java or Adobe or other applications that are third-party that may have vulnerabilities that need to be patched as well. So make sure you use a good vulnerability scanner, identify those, and make sure they're kept patched and up to date. And that's going to be a very important step that's easy to do, doesn't cost a lot of money, it just requires effort and attention, and you can greatly reduce your risk profile against a ransomware attack. So the final step is basically having a backup plan. Now this is not perfect or foolproof, but nevertheless you should have some sort of a plan for backup and recovery of your data in the event that you're attacked by ransomware. So typically the way a ransomware attack unfolds over time is this. Somehow the hacker gets into your system. It could be one of a myriad ways that we've talked about in this webinar so far. Lots of ways for them to get in. Once they do get in, the next thing that they'll do is that they'll encrypt all of your, as many files as they can reach, see, and get a hold of, and then they'll send you a message or let you know to contact them so that you can pay them the ransom. They'll give you a key, and then you can unlock the encryption and be able to use your files again. Now, of course, if you have a very good backup system and you're very consistent about that, what you can do is restore your backup, tell the hacker to go home and not pay the ransom. There's a caveat and a warning about that, however. So oftentimes our customers, their idea of a backup solution is, for example, to use something like Dropbox or OneDrive, where the user might have a drive mapped out to Dropbox or out to OneDrive, and if that connection is live and real and running on either your server or running on your laptop at the time the ransomware hits, the ransomware is going to see those files on your backup system and encrypt those as well. So really you want to select a backup system that's offline, that the hacker can't see through drive mappings or any other mechanism or file share, something that's separate. That's going to give you one layer of protection. So make sure that your backups are kept offline and distinctly separate and not connected to your production network. The other thing that you can do is to make sure that you do incremental and time-specific backup sets that you can go back to. And so let me give you an example. There are cases where ransomware attackers will place the malware into your systems and files and not execute them right away. So in other words, your files will be infected. You may not know that they've been infected by malware, and then you back them up. So once they activate the malware on your system and encrypt all your files, it turns out that all of your backup files are also have the malware and will be encrypted as well. So it's very important to have, 1 week backup, a 1 month backup, so that you can incrementally go back in time to a point before the malware actually infected your files. That would be a key step. So consider your cloud infrastructure, like I said, in terms of where your backups are. The other thing that people often overlook, which in this day and age actually makes sense because everything is digital, is having hard copy, having analog systems that you can go back to keep your business running. So, one client, runs a retail wholesale operation that basically runs point of sale equipment. So once that malware hit them, their systems obviously are down and they can't conduct business. Every minute that they're down costs them thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, had they had a paper backup system, paper invoices, paper orders, even credit card sliders that they could use manually. They could still do business. It would be, a lot of paper that they'd have to enter later, but they could at least continue to generate revenue while the ransomware issue is being resolved by their IT team. So consider having manual checks, manual orders, invoices, credit card, not credit card readers, but credit card sliders that you can use in your organization in the event that you're down either by a disaster or by ransomware. So have an analog backup plan, okay? And that includes hard copy of incident response plans and hard copies of, instructions about what to do in the event something like this happens. So the other thing that's really common is for people not to know what to do. So once you get attacked by ransomware, the first thing that happens is just sheer panic. It's just like, what the heck do we do? What happened? It's like complete chaos. So it's very important to, beforehand, when cooler heads can prevail, sit down with your team, identify what it is that we're going to do. So if this happens, what's step one? Do we unplug from the internet? Do we unplug the PC from the network to do forensics? Who do we call? Who do we not call? Who do we inform within our organization about what's going on? This all should be written down so it's very clear who's responsible for what. Because believe me, in the heat of battle, when things are just flying everywhere, the last thing you want to do is try to guess what to do next. It's better to have it down on a piece of paper. So please take the time to develop what we call an incident response plan in order to how to deal with these problems. So at the end of the day, it's not possible 100% to prevent something like this to happen. But if you take these 5 specific steps, I can guarantee you your risk profile will go down significantly. You need to identify what information you actually have on your network, know where it all is, so you know what to protect. Number 2, do a risk assessment. What is the likelihood and the impact of losing this piece of data that you've actually discovered, and then rank them in order of priority. We need to protect this thing first, and my personal pictures of my kid, I don't have to worry about protecting those, right? So that's the idea. It's going to be on a scale. Number 3, once you've identified the high-risk items, come up with a plan to strengthen your network, and we've already given you quite a few ideas in this webinar, and of course we're available to help you with more if you wish. So those are the 3 key steps. And then, number 4, don't forget to be patching and updating on a consistent basis. And then finally 5, back up, restore, test, and have a plan. So let's say, God forbid, it does happen. You are hit by ransomware or some event happens to you and you're attacked. After the dust is settled, the forensics team has left, you've recovered all your files and systems, and you're back to business as usual. It's incredibly important for everyone to sit down again and say what happened, what went right, what went wrong, document those things that didn't go as well as you would like, and implement new procedures, and then start the process essentially all over again. So it's just a big cycle. Go back to identifying your data, prioritizing the data, figuring out a way to strengthen it, patching and updating, backing up, and the cycle repeats itself over and over again. So make sure that you learn your lessons and that you keep up with the evolution of information security technology as it moves forward. And here at ISSQUARED, we're here to help you do exactly that. So I really appreciate your time listening to me today. I hope that some of the information that you received today was helpful and useful. If it was, please drop us a line and let us know. If you have feedback on how we could do better or what information you may want to know, we really want to hear that as well, because we're here to serve you. So thank you very much for your time. And for me and the rest of the staff here at ISSQUARED, thank you very much.